All right, let's talk about the Byron School. Most schools have ghost stories, right? Little rumors students pass around. But the stories from Byron, there's something else entirely. We're not talking about simple student gossip here. We're diving into some really strange, really persistent hauntings that have been going on for decades.
And that right there is the key. This isn't just kids trying to spook each other. The most chilling, the most detailed stories come from the adults. We're talking custodians, staff members, even the superintendents who ran the whole place. These are credible people, reporting things that they can't explain.
So let's get right into it. Let's hear from the witnesses themselves. And as we go through these accounts, you're going to start to see a pattern, a very weird pattern. Okay, so one of the big recurring themes, phantom noises, specifically noises coming from office equipment that shouldn't be making any sound at all. Our first story comes from a custodian, Eddie Davis, who ran into this head on. So picture this. You're Eddie Davis. You're a custodian, just doing your job, cleaning a classroom, and you hear this clicking noise. You look around, see nothing, go back to work, then it happens again. The third time, you're like, okay, what is that? You follow the sound and trace it to a little adding machine, and you realize it's not even plugged in. Wild, right?
And this kind of thing isn't new either. This goes way back. Back in the 60s and 70s, a former student, Donna Weatherman, said she would constantly hear someone just typing like crazy in the old art room. The sound was super loud, super clear, but every single time, the room was completely empty.
So you see the pattern emerging, right? It's not just one thing. It's like this whole chorus of phantom sounds reported over the years. You've got unplugged machines clicking away, an invisible typist going at it, weird scuffing noises from stairways that are literally blocked off, and even the clinking and clinking of weights in a locked, pitch-black room. It's a whole symphony of unexplained sounds. But, the experiences at the Byron School, they go way beyond just weird noises. Things started getting physical, really unsettling. A custodian named Janice Adams had an experience that was, well, way more terrifying. So Janice goes upstairs to grab some cleaning supplies, and out of nowhere, she's just hit by this intense, bone-chilling cold. And then the smell. She said it was indescribably horrible. She was just frozen to the spot. In her head, she says a quick prayer, and then she sees it. Something like a smoky whirlwind moves away from her. I mean, she ran downstairs, totally terrified, and told the maintenance guy she was never, ever going up there alone again. All right, now we get to what might be the single most detailed and frankly the most chilling story of them all. And this one comes straight from the top, from Harold Hopkinson, who was the school superintendent all the way back from 1952 to 1963. He was working late one night. So Hopkinson is all alone working in his office. Suddenly, he hears the big front door open and then footsteps, clear as day, coming up the old wooden stairs. He goes to look, but there's no one there. A little while later, he hears the library door open, and the same footsteps go back down the stairs and out the front door. He's watching this time, still sees nothing. And then it happens a third time. The front door opens, the footsteps start coming up again, but this time they walk right past him. So close he could have reached out and touched someone, and then they just continue on into the library. But there was absolutely, positively no one there. And this quote from him just says it all, doesn't it? He said, "If his eyes had been shut, he would have sworn a person was walking right in front of him. The sounds were that real. The creak of the floorboards, the weight of the steps. His ears were screaming, 'Someone is here.' But his eyes, wide open, were telling him he was totally alone. It freaked him out so much he didn't work late at that school again for years." Okay, so with so many stories from so many people, you have to ask, what is actually going on here? So let's shift gears a bit. Let's move away from the ghost stories and look at the attempts to find a logical, rational explanation for all this. And really, it all boils down to two main camps, right? On one side, you have people who believe these are real encounters with some kind of ghostly presence. And on the other side, you have the skeptics who are convinced there have to be logical, environmental reasons for every strange sound and spooky feeling. Superintendent Alan Blair, he was definitely in that skeptical camp. There was this time when students reported a weird rattling and scuffing noise coming from a stairwell that had been completely blocked off. So he goes to investigate with them. And sure enough, they all heard it. But after a super thorough search, nothing. He found absolutely nothing. His conclusion? It wasn't a ghost. It was just atmospheric conditions, the old building settling, pipes making noise, the wind, that kind of thing. Of course, you can't have a haunted place without a good origin story, right?
And the big rumor at Byron School has always been that a teacher committed suicide right there in the building, in the room that's now the weight room. But is there any truth to that?
Well, it turns out this is a textbook case of how urban legends get started. When people dug into it, talking to folks who'd lived in town forever, the real story came out. There were two completely separate tragedies, decades apart. First, in the 1920s, a teacher tragically died in a gas fire at her own home. Then, in the 40s, a local man, who had no connection to the school, took his own life. See what happened? Over time, public memory just kind of smushed these two events together, creating this dramatic but totally false story about the school. It just goes to show how our memories can stitch things together to create a brand new story that feels true.
So, okay, we've pretty much debunked the main ghost story, and we have some pretty logical explanations for at least some of the noises, but that doesn't mean the case is closed, not by a long shot. Even with all that, some things just remain unexplained.
One theory that gets thrown around for the sounds is this idea of environmental playback. It's the notion that really strong events can almost leave an acoustic imprint on a place. So maybe those old wooden floors are just replaying the sound of those phantom footsteps, or the building itself is echoing old sounds like typing or the clank of weights. It's a fascinating idea for sure, but at the end of the day, it's still just a theory.
And that theory definitely doesn't explain everything. How does it account for what happened to Janice Adams? That intense cold, that awful smell, the smoky whirlwind? And it really doesn't explain one of the most common things people report today: lights just turning on by themselves, in rooms that are locked up tight.
Which brings us full circle, back to our most credible witness, Harold Hopkinson. Even decades later, he would tell you he doesn't believe in ghosts, but he also could never, ever deny what happened to him that night. He was just stuck in the middle, trying to make sense of something impossible that he experienced.
And that's really where the story leaves us. Look, old buildings make weird noises. We know that. And rumors can grow and change and take on a life of their own. But some things are harder to just brush aside. So the question is still out there. If it's not a ghost walking those halls, what in the world is still turning on the lights in the Byron School?